Most people today who have heard that the nightmare is an actual being in European folklore and not just a certain type of dream state associate the being with horses. A mare is indeed a horse, but this interpretation is not correct. The mare of the nightmare is a demon, and the word for horse and the root of nightmare derive from a different root. In Dutch, the nightmare is known as the Mare or Mare, sometimes called nachtmare or nachtmare, analogous to the English word. Over time, the Dutch word changed to nachtmerrie, where Mary means female horse. We see that the folk etymology of night horse was very common. The German word is Mare. This is seldom used and sometimes rendered as Nachtmar. But there is no confusion with the female horse because modern German has lost the corresponding cognate of mare or Mary. The common German word for nightmare, however, is of interest. They speak of an Albtraum or Albdruck. Both words relate the phenomena to elves. Modern German Alp, or Alf is literally translated as evil spirit, although the connection with elf is clear. In Swedish, the night demon is called Mare. Old Icelandic has the same word. The being appears in Yngling saga and causes the death of King Vanlandi. Although the motive is particular to Germanic folklore, the mare's name forms the basis of the French word for nightmare, cauchemar. What is nightmare? Then what is the nightmare exactly? Nowadays, word designates a bad dream. When we experience strong, frightening emotions while dreaming, the sensation is so overwhelming that we wake up from the dream. The impression is so strong that we have trouble sleeping again. Some of the dream sensation lingers and makes us experience presences in the room, regardless whether this is true or not. And the whole phenomena is explained psychologically. In the old days, nightmares visited people in their sleep and caused bad dreams. At least, that is the idea we have. If we compare actual accounts, which in this case are necessarily folk tales, we must conclude that a nightly visit by the mare was rather different from what we call a bad dream. Reports about the nightmare are recorded up until 100 years ago. Stories are found in Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, Scandinavia, and Great Britain. I will draw mainly from Dutch and Belgian sources. Either people or horses are ridden by the nightmare. When a person goes to bed, he suddenly feels a pressure on his body, usually in the area of the chest. Sometimes the pressure travels from the feet to the head. The person cannot breathe. When he wants to scream from shock, he perceives that he cannot. When the crisis is over, the person sweats and feels tired. Victims are both men and women. When horses get taken by the nightmare, their manes get tangled. Horses become restless and they sweat. They don't sleep all night. In my opinion, the nightmare has become a scapegoat for the state of such horses because of the confusing folk etymology. What happens according to eyewitness accounts is that the person or the animal has been ridden by a woman. Sometimes she was a spirit or witch, but often she was recognized by the victim. In many cases, the mare was a real person who suffered from a certain affliction, which involved her traveling out of body to attack horses or people. The victim was usually known to the mare woman. When the mare woman attacked someone, she became very still, even in the middle of an activity. There is an account from Belgium in which a girl worked for a bakery, and while she was kneading dough, she suddenly stopped. Miles away, someone similar to her was ridden by the mare. We see a sort of out-of-body experience developing. I believe that the phenomenon might have been part of the training among witches within a Germanic context. We know from Norse myth and saga that certain women practice this kind of out-of-body techniques. This practice is known as satyr, although satyr comprises more than just this. An example is found in Frid Bjolf saga, in which two women practiced satyr to control a whale at sea. It appeared to onlookers that the women were riding the whale. In Icelandic folklore, this particular technique is known as ascending. In Ynglinga Saga, chapter 7, Odin is said to possess the same ability. From Lee Hollander's translation, Odin could shift his appearance. When he did so, his body would lie there as if he were asleep or dead. But he himself, in an instant, in the shape of a bird or animal, a fish or serpent, went to distant countries. The passage implies that he could be at two places simultaneously. We see the motif reoccur in the nightmare stories. Only a few pages later, we find the story of Vanlandi. In chapter 13, Hold is asked to perform her sorcery to compel Vanlandi to return to Finland or else kill him. According to the text, when Hold exercises her satyr, Vanlandi is overcome by sleep and senses somebody atop him. He identifies the presence as a Mare, but the weight is so heavy that it crushes his legs. Eventually it kills the king. Clearly the Mare has been set by Hold. In folk stories, the nightmare is identified by a particular technique. When the victim complains of being ridden by the mare, he is usually given the advice to hold a knife to his chest on the following night. The person does this, but consciously or subconsciously misunderstands the advice and holds the knife pointed upwards. When the mare attacks him in the night, she screams and disappears. On the following morning, the woman who is the mare is found injured or dead. She is usually the one who gave the advice about the knife in the first place. The motive with the knife is very common in Belgium. In all instances, the nightmare phenomena is experienced as a pressure. Heavy weight is felt on the chest or on the whole body. The victim is unable to move, breathe, or scream. In my opinion, the phenomena occurs naturally when a person wakes up during a certain part of the sleep cycle. It is well known that the human body rests in a condition of paralysis or near paralysis during the REM or dreaming phase. This is called REM atonia. It is explained by the fact that the sleeping person would otherwise walk, move, and act according to the impulses in the dream state. The inhibition of movement prevents the person from harming himself unknowingly. I believe that a person who wakes up suddenly during his sleep and cannot move his body is coming straight out of a REM phase. Why the person would suddenly wake up remains a mystery. All the nightmare concepts seem to indicate paralysis. The word mare would cognate with the Old Norse verb murja, which means to crush, related to English to mar. The German terminology indicates the same. Druck and Alpdruck means push. Even the French word for nightmare refers to pressure. The Old French word coucher means to press and forms the first part of cauchemar. The traditional expression for experiencing this sudden nightly pressure is to be ridden by the mare. In Dutch, the expression is door de mare bereden. German folklore has Mare reiten. The victim experiences a being on top of him. It means that the person lies on his back. Most folklore reports seem to indicate the same. I wonder whether this position somehow encourages this strange phenomenon. Besides REM atonia, there is another experience which might shed light on the subject, and this is sleep paralysis. In these cases, the person incidentally experiences paralysis when falling asleep. According to experts, sleep paralysis occurs mostly when the person lies on his back. How to drive out the demons. In beating the nightmare, we have already mentioned the motive of the knife, but the nightmare seems to have been so common that a whole load of remedies existed to keep the demon out. One of the most fascinating techniques was to swap your shoes or slippers in front of the bed, the right one where the left would be, and the other way around. Similarly, bricks were hung crosswise in front of the house or barn. The intention was to confuse the mare. Verses were sung before going to bed. They are similar in wording to charms against witches. The verses ask the nightmare to count all blades of grass, for instance. This and similar actions keep the demons occupied all night. A few more remedies are worth mentioning. One of them is the mistletoe. The plant was hung under the roof to protect against the mare. In Dutch, the mistletoe is called Maretak, or mare twig. This is possibly the reason why mistletoe features in the myth of Balder's death. One day Balder wakes up from a dream which foretells his own death. Thereupon his mother attempts to protect him, but eventually Balder is killed by the mistletoe. Another means of protection is the pentagram. We know this because the symbol is named after the nightmare. In Dutch, the pentagram is called Mare. According to a German tradition, the same symbol, Mare, is applied on the threshold and doorframe of the bedroom for protection on May Eve. In German, the same symbol is better known as Druidenfuss, the Dutch equivalent being Drodenvoet. Belgium and Holland, the Druid is almost never heard of. According to the German folklore, the Druid is explained as a night demon or elf. The word is supposed to derive from a word meaning to tread, and may in fact be cognate with it. It is related to Gothic Trudan and Old Norse Troda with the same meaning. The etymology of Druid conveniently ties in with the nightmare experience of pressure. Nonetheless, I would like to link the word with a member of the Norse gods. The daughter of Thor is called Thrud. In Norse, Pruder. Her name seems much closer to Druid and Drode than the Gothic verb Trudan. Unfortunately, her name has never been satisfactorily explained. Druid is a woman and a character of legend, but not much is known about her. She figures in Alvismal, a poem from the Edda. In the story, Alvis, a dwarf, visits Thor's house and asks Thrud's hand. Thor is not pleased with the proposal and tries to stall the dwarf. The god is delighted when at last the sun rises because Alvis cannot suffer sunlight. This motive occurs in folklore quite often and might indicate that Alvis and his kind only live at night. The fact that he chooses Thrud as his bride might mean that she too is a creature of the night. At least dwarves were associated with elves. In Norse mythology, they were called dark elves or black elves. Analogously, the nightmare creatures in Germany were called elves. Thrud might well be the mother of a whole class of female beings who operate at night. In passing, it should be noted that the German words Alp, Mar, and Druid would refer to both men and women. We have established that many folk tales explain the nightmare as a projection of a woman's supernatural powers, whether intentionally or not. In spite of that, she might still be a supernatural being in origin, known as the Mare and of elf kind.